Commander Jake Sullivan sat in his office on the human colony of New Denver. The morning was quiet on the planet Kepler 442b. Outside his window, he could see the first settlers working in the fields. Their crops grew well in the alien soil. Life was peaceful here on the edge of known space. A communication device on his desk began to flash red. Jake pressed the button, and Admiral Lisa Rodriguez appeared on the screen. Her face looked serious. She was calling from the U.S. Defiance, humanity's biggest warship. "Jake, we have a problem," Admiral Rodriguez said. "The Corvin Federation has attacked the Alterian Republic. They broke the peace treaty that lasted for 1,000 years. Jake felt his blood turn cold. The Alterians were a gentle people who could read minds. They had never hurt anyone. They lived on beautiful worlds filled with crystal cities and floating gardens. Jake had visited their capital once during a diplomatic mission. The Alterians had been kind to him. "How bad is it?" Jake asked. "Bad, very bad. The Corvins are not just conquering planets. They are killing every Alterian they find. Men, women, children. They want to wipe out the entire species." Jake stood up from his chair. His hands formed fists. "What does the Galactic Council say?" Admiral Rodriguez shook her head. "They are meeting now, but you know how they are. They will talk and talk. They will form committees. They will write reports. By the time they decide what to do, there might be no Alterians left to save." Jake knew she was right. The Galactic Council was made up of very old alien species. They had been around for thousands of years. They were used to peace and comfort. When problems came up, they preferred to talk rather than fight. "I want you to come to the council meeting," Admiral Rodriguez said. "We need someone there who understands what real war looks like." Jake nodded. He had fought in the border wars when human colonies were attacked by pirates. He knew that sometimes talking was not enough. Sometimes you had to fight. 2 hours later, Jake sat in the great hall of the Galactic Council. The room was huge and filled with strange beings. The Vorthic looked like living crystals that sang when they spoke. The Zephyrians were made of pure energy and floated in the air. There were dozens of other species, all very different from humans. Ambassador Helen Carter stood at the human table. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her voice was strong. She had represented humanity for 10 years and knew all the alien ways. The Vorthic ambassador began to speak. His crystal body glowed as he sang his words. "We must approach this problem with wisdom. The Corvins are acting from fear. If we show them kindness, they will stop their attacks." Many of the other aliens nodded. They liked this idea. Peace was always better than war. The Zephyrian delegate spoke next. Her energy form pulsed with different colors. "We should stop trading with the Corvins. When they cannot buy what they need, they will change their minds." More nodding. The aliens were comfortable with this solution. It would not require them to fight. Jake watched the discussion with growing anger. While these beings talked about kindness and trade, the Alterians were dying. Every minute they wasted meant more innocent people were being killed. "Ambassador." Carter asked to speak. The room became quiet. Humans were still new to the galaxy. They had only joined the council 50 years ago. Most aliens saw them as young and inexperienced. "Thank you for your suggestions," Helen said. "But I have a different idea. Humanity volunteers to handle this situation." The room erupted in confused voices. The Vorthic ambassador's crystal body flashed bright red. "Handle it? What do you mean?" Helen kept her voice calm. "We mean we will stop the Corvins from killing the Alterians. We will do it quickly and completely." The Zephyrian delegate pulsed with orange light, which Jake knew meant surprise. "How can you possibly succeed where we have not even tried? You are the youngest species here. You have no experience with galactic warfare. Jake saw Helen smile. It was not a friendly smile. We have experience with war. More than you might think. The Corvin representative, a large reptilian being with sharp teeth, laughed. Humans think they are warriors? We Corvins have conquered 100 worlds. We have fought for thousands of years. What can a species of soft mammals do to us? Helen turned to face the Corvin. You are about to find out. The alien delegates began talking all at once. They could not believe what they were hearing. How could humans think they could fight the mighty Corvin Federation? It was impossible. But Jake knew something the aliens did not. While they had been living in peace, humans had been preparing. They remembered the hard lessons of their violent past. They had not forgotten how to fight. The Vorthic ambassador called for order. Humans, you do not understand. War between galactic powers is not like your small colonial disputes. The Corvin Federation has millions of ships. They have weapons that can destroy planets. They have warriors who know no fear. So do we, Helen said quietly. The room fell silent. There was something in her voice that made even the proud Corvins pause. It was not anger or fear. It was certainty. Jake received a message on his personal communicator. It was from Captain Rick Martinez, who commanded the human fleet defenses. The message was simple. We are ready. Across the galaxy, human ships began to move. They emerged from hidden bases in asteroids and moons. For 50 years, humans had been building and preparing in secret. While the aliens thought they were just peaceful traders and explorers, humanity had been getting ready for war. The Galactic Council continued to debate, but Jake knew the talking was over. The aliens had chosen to do nothing, while innocent people died. Humanity had chosen to act. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not the harmless species they appeared to be. They were about to discover that when humans decided to fight, they fought to win, and they always won. General Patricia Williams stood in the command center deep inside Luna Base. The room was filled with screens showing star maps and ship positions. Red dots marked Corvin forces. Blue dots showed human ships moving into position. For the first time in 50 years, humanity was going to war. All units report ready, General, said Lieutenant Colonel Steve Parker, her communications officer. Patricia nodded. She was a veteran of the border wars, where human colonies had fought off pirate attacks. She knew how to command troops in battle. But this was different. This was not just about defending human space. This was about saving an entire alien species from extinction. Send the signal, she ordered. Across the galaxy, human ships began to decloak. The UE's Vengeance appeared near the Corvon Supply Depot at Wolf 359. The UE's Retribution materialized in the asteroid belt of the Tau Ceti system. Dozens of other vessels revealed themselves simultaneously. The aliens had thought humans only had a few exploration ships and trading vessels. They were wrong. Humanity had been building a war fleet in secret for decades. The ships were ugly compared to the elegant vessels of other species. They were built like metal boxes with weapons sticking out of them. But they were designed for one purpose: to fight and win. Captain Danny Brooks commanded the heavy cruiser UES Hammer. His ship led a strike force toward the Corvin fleet that was attacking the Alterian world of Harmony. The Corvins had 20 battleships surrounding the planet. Their commander had sent a message demanding surrender. Sir, we are detecting the human fleet, reported the Corvin sensor operator on the flagship Deathbringer. 12 ships approaching from the outer system. War Chief Grinding Fang of Battle looked at the tactical display. He was a massive reptilian warrior with scars covering his hide. He had conquered 15 worlds for the Corvin Federation. Humans did not worry him. 12 ships? That is all they send against us? He laughed. showing his sharp teeth. These mammals must want to die quickly. The Corvin fleet turned to face the approaching humans. They formed a battle line, as their ancestors had done for thousands of years. Each ship would face the enemy in single combat. It was the honorable way to fight, but the humans did not follow the ancient rules. As soon as they came into weapons range, all 12 ships opened fire at once. They concentrated their attacks on the lead Corvin vessel, the heavy cruiser Bone Crusher. "They are not fighting with honor," shouted the Corvin tactical officer. "They are attacking as a group." War Chief Grinding Fang of Battle watched in shock as the Bone Crusher exploded under the combined human attack. The humans had destroyed his ship in seconds. This was not how civilized species fought. All ships attacked the nearest human vessel. He ordered, "Show them how true warriors fight." But the humans were already moving. Their ships split into 3 groups and attacked from different directions. The Corvins tried to respond, but they were confused. Their battle plans did not account for this kind of coordinated assault. Captain Brooks watched the battle from his command chair. His tactical officer, Commander Lisa Johnson, reported the enemy positions. "Corvin ships are trying to reform their mine. They are moving slowly." "That is their mistake," Brooks said. "They think we will fight like gentlemen, launch fighters." Human fighter squadrons poured out of the larger ships. The small craft swarmed around the Corvin vessels like angry bees. The Corvins had fighters too, but they were trained for single combat between pilots. They did not know how to fight against coordinated swarms. Dr. Amanda Foster watched the battle from the human command ship UES Defiance. She was humanity's chief military strategist. For years, she had studied how alien species fought. She had discovered their weakness. They had become predictable. "The Corvins are following Pattern 7, she told Admiral Rodriguez. "They will try to break through our center with their heavy ships." "Recommendations?" the Admiral asked. "Let them come. We will pull back and hit them from the sides." The human fleet began to retreat. The Corvins thought they were winning. War Chief Grinding Fang of Battle led his remaining ships in a charge toward the human center. But it was a trap. When the Corvins reached the middle of the human formation, the trap was sprung. Human ships that had been hiding behind asteroids appeared on both sides. The Corvins found themselves surrounded. "This is not possible," whispered the Corvin sensor operator. How did they hide so many ships? The answer was simple. Humans had learned to use deception in war. They used false signals to make their ships look like asteroids. They used holographic projections to make one ship look like 3. They lied, cheated, and tricked their enemies. To the Corvins, this was dishonorable. But to humans, it was just another tool for winning. The battle was over in 2 hours. 15 Corvin ships were destroyed. The remaining 5 surrendered. The humans had lost only 1 ship, a destroyer that had taken too much damage protecting. The others, on the surface of Harmony, Staff Sergeant Carlos Diaz led a company of human Marines. They had landed to rescue Alterian civilians who were trapped in the capital city. The Corvins had surrounded the city with ground troops. The Corvin ground commander, War Chief Slashing Claw Victory, expected the humans to issue a formal challenge. That was how ground combat worked. Leaders would meet in single combat. The winner would claim the battlefield. Instead, the humans attacked from 6 directions at once. They used artillery, airstrikes, and electronic warfare. They jammed Corvin communications and blinded their sensors. They hit supply lines and command posts. Where is their honor? Demanded War Chief Slashing Claw Victory. Why do they not fight like warriors? His aide, a younger Corvin named Sharp Tooth of Ambition, watched human troops advance through the city. Perhaps they fight like humans, he said quietly. The Corvin ground forces began to collapse. They were individually stronger than humans, but they could not adapt to human tactics. They had been trained for honorable combat, not for the dirty, efficient warfare that humans practiced. By the end of the day, harmony was free. The Alterian civilians were safe. The Corvin forces had retreated to their ships and fled the system. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy at light speed. The ancient alien species could not believe what they were hearing. How had the youngest galactic power defeated the mighty Corvin Federation? The Vorthic Empire called an emergency session of their Crystal Council. The energy beings of the Zephyrian Collective analyzed the battle records. Other species began to study human military tactics. They all reached the same conclusion. Humans were dangerous. More dangerous than anyone had realized. Ambassador Helen Carter received a message from the Galactic Council. They wanted to meet with her immediately. The tone of the message was very different from before. The aliens were no longer treating humans like inexperienced newcomers. They were treating them like a threat. But Helen was not worried. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they were willing to fight for what was right. They had proven that sometimes action was better than words. The war was just beginning, but the first battle was won. The Alterians were safe, at least for now. And the galaxy had learned an important lesson. When humans decided to fight, they fought to win. The question now was what the galaxy would do about it. The news of humanity's victory at Harmony spread through the galaxy like wildfire. In the crystal cities of the Vorthic Empire, the ancient beings sang songs of worry. In the energy fields of the Zephyrian Collective, streams of light pulsed with concern. Even the proud Corvin Federation was shaken by their defeat. The Vorthic Empire decided to send an ambassador to Earth. Crystalline Song of Ancient Wisdom had lived for 3,000 years. She had seen the rise and fall of dozens of species. She expected to find humans who were similar to her own people, evolved beyond primitive violence, wise and peaceful. The ambassador arrived at the Pentagon, the center of human military power. She was greeted by Secretary of Defense Kevin Thompson, a former Marine who still walked with a limp from his service in the border wars. His face was scarred from battle, and his eyes were hard. "Welcome to Earth," Kevin said. His voice was polite, but not warm. Crystalline Song, Ancient Wisdom studied the human with her enhanced senses. She could detect the violence that lay beneath his calm surface. This was not what she had expected. "I come seeking understanding," she said, her crystal body ringing like a bell. "Your species has done something remarkable. You have defeated the Corvins in a single battle. How is this possible?" Kevin smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "We fight to win. It is that simple. But surely you must have some deeper strategy? Some ancient wisdom passed down from your elders?" "Our wisdom is simple too," Kevin replied. "Hit hard, hit fast, and do not stop until the enemy surrenders or dies." The crystal being felt a chill run through her molecular structure. This was not the response of a civilized species. This was the voice of a predator. "What are your intentions now?" she asked. "Will you seek to conquer other worlds? Will you challenge the established order?" Kevin leaned back in his chair. "We are going to win this war, and we are going home. That is all." But Crystalline Song of Ancient Wisdom was not convinced. She had seen the human battle recordings. She had watched their ships move with deadly precision. She had seen their soldiers advance without fear. This was not a species that would be content to stay in one place, in space. Captain Susan Mitchell commanded the heavy cruiser UES Devastator. Her ship was leading a human fleet toward Rigel Station, the strongest Corvin military base in the sector. The station was built inside a massive asteroid, and protected by energy shields that could stop any known weapon. "Captain, we are detecting." "The Corvin Defense Fleet," reported Lieutenant Commander Paul Davis, her tactical officer. 30 ships, including 5 battleships. Susan studied the tactical display. The Corvins had learned from their defeat at Harmony. They were not forming a traditional battle line. Instead, they were spread out in a defensive formation around the station. "They are adapting," she said. "Good. That means they are taking U.S. seriously." The human fleet approached the station at maximum speed. The Corvins opened fire first, their energy weapons lighting up space. But the human ships did not slow down. They charged straight into the enemy formation. War Chief Burning Fang of Rage commanded the Corvin defense. He had studied the human tactics used at Harmony. He thought he understood how to fight them. But he was wrong. The humans did something completely unexpected. When the Corvin energy shields proved effective against human plasma weapons, the human ships stopped firing. Instead, they began to change their weapons in the middle of battle. "How are they modifying their armament so quickly?" demanded the Corvin tactical officer. War Chief Burning Fang of Rage watched in amazement as human ships began firing different types of weapons. Some used kinetic rounds that punched through energy shields. Others used electromagnetic pulses that disrupted Corvin electronics. Still others used exotic matter that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. "They are adapting faster than we can respond," he said in disbelief. The human advantage was their technology, but more than that, it was their mindset. Human engineers had designed their ships to be flexible. Human commanders were trained to think creatively. Human soldiers were taught to improvise. When the Corvin fighters used their superior speed and maneuverability, human pilots responded with tactics that horrified the honorable Corvin warriors. They flew their ships directly into enemy formations, using their own destruction as weapons. They coordinated suicide attacks that eliminated entire squadrons. "They are madmen," whispered one Corvin pilot before his ship was destroyed by a human fighter that had chosen to ram him rather than retreat. But the humans were not mad. They were determined. They understood that sometimes victory required sacrifice. They were willing to die to protect innocent people. The battle for Rigel Station lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the station was in human hands. The Corvin Defense Fleet was destroyed. The humans had lost 12 ships, but they had won another impossible victory. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian Collective was trying to understand human strategy through electronic espionage. The energy beings attempted to enter human computer networks to steal military secrets. They believed their superior technology would make this easy. They were wrong. Dr. Robert Hayes was humanity's leading expert in digital warfare. He had been expecting this attack. When the Zephyrian infiltrators entered human systems, they found themselves trapped in virtual environments that Dr. Hayes had prepared. The energy beings were forced to witness centuries of human military history. They watched the ancient battles of Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar. They saw the medieval warfare of knights and castles. They experienced the industrial slaughter of World War I and World War II. They witnessed the nuclear weapons that had nearly destroyed Earth. The Zephyrians retreated from human networks in terror. They had seen the true nature of humanity, a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to fight and kill. Every generation had found new ways to wage war. Every century had brought new weapons and tactics, most terrifying of all. Humans had learned to fight not just for conquest, but for ideals. They would die for freedom, for justice, for the protection of others. This was something the ancient aliens could not understand. On the Alturian world of Serenity, Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Adams led a rescue mission to liberate prisoners from Corvin labor camps. The operation was dangerous, but it showed something important about human nature. They fought for others, not just themselves. The Alterians were telepathic. They could sense the emotions of other beings. When they encountered the human soldiers, they felt something that amazed them: genuine care for strangers. These humans risk their lives for people they have never met, reported Elder Mind Touch of Distant Stars to the Alterian Council. They feel pain when they see suffering. They feel joy when they save lives. The rescued Alterians spread this knowledge throughout their telepathic network. Soon, every surviving Alterian knew that humans were not fighting for glory or conquest. They were fighting because it was the right thing to do. This news reached other species throughout the galaxy. The peaceful Centauran Federation began to reconsider their pacifist policies. The merchant guilds of the trader worlds started to question their neutrality. Even some members of the Corvan Federation began to doubt their leaders. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy was changing. The old order of ancient species dominating through age and tradition was being challenged by a young species that believed in action over words. The Galactic Council called another emergency session. This time, the tone was very different. The alien delegates were no longer dismissive of humanity. They were frightened. Ambassador Helen Carter entered the Great Hall to find hundreds of alien eyes staring at her. The atmosphere was tense. She could feel the fear and uncertainty in the room. The council recognizes the human representative, announced the Vorthic moderator. Helen walked to the center of the chamber. She looked around at the assembled aliens, beings of crystal and energy, reptiles and insects, creatures of metal and living gas. They were all waiting for her to speak. "You wanted to know what humanity intends," she said. "I will tell you. We intend to win this war. We intend to save the Alterians. We intend to make the galaxy safe for peaceful species." The Corvan representative rose to speak. "You cannot defeat us. We are the strongest military power in the galaxy. We have been warriors for 10,000 years. Helen smiled. "You have been playing at war for 10,000 years. We have been fighting real wars for our entire existence. There is a difference." The room fell silent. The aliens were beginning to understand that they were not dealing with a typical species. Humanity was something new, something dangerous, something that could change everything. The galaxy was starting to tremble, and the war was far from over. The Corvan Federation was losing the war, and Supreme War Chief Devouring Maw of Darkness knew it. His forces had been defeated in 3 major battles. Human fleets were advancing on multiple fronts. The galaxy was beginning to turn against his people. In desperation, he made a decision that would change everything. Deep in the secret vaults of the Corvan homeworld, his scientists had been working on a terrible weapon. They called it the World Breaker, a massive dreadnought ship capable of destroying entire planets. The World Breaker was 5 miles long and covered in weapons that could crack a world in half. It had never been used because the Corvans had always been able to win their wars through normal means. But these humans were not normal enemies. "Launch the World Breaker," ordered Supreme War Chief Devouring Maw of Darkness. "Target the human homeworld, destroy Earth, and break their spirit." The massive ship began its journey toward the Sol system. Its approach was detected by human sensors when it was still 3 days away. The news reached Admiral Frank Peterson, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet. Within hours, Admiral Peterson was 60 years old and had served in space for 40 years. He had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens. But he had never faced anything like the World Breaker. His fleet of 20 ships seemed tiny compared to the approaching monster. "Sir, the Galactic Council is offering to negotiate," reported his communications officer, Commander Mary Wilson. "They say they can arrange humanity's surrender to save Earth." Admiral Peterson's face hardened. "Send them a message. Tell them that humanity does not surrender. We never have, and we never will." The admiral called a meeting of his senior officers. The situation was desperate. Earth's orbital defenses were strong, but they were designed to fight normal ships, not a weapon that could destroy planets. "We need to stop that thing before it reaches Earth," said Captain Helen Parker, his tactical advisor. "But how? Our weapons might not even scratch its hull." Admiral Peterson looked at the tactical display showing the approaching world breaker. Then he looked at his officers. These were good people who had families on Earth. They deserved to know the truth. "We cannot stop it with conventional weapons," he said. "But we can stop it. There is a way." The plan was simple and terrible. A small human ship would be loaded with the most powerful explosive device in the human arsenal. A volunteer pilot would fly it directly into the world breaker's core and detonate it from the inside. The mission was suicide. A pilot would have no chance of survival. But it was the only way to save Earth and the billions of people who lived there. Captain Tony Martinez volunteered immediately. He was young, only 25, and the son of Admiral Peterson. He had been trained as a fighter pilot and was one of the best in the fleet. "I will not let you sacrifice my son," Admiral Peterson said when he heard of the volunteer. "With respect, sir, you are not letting me do anything," Tony replied. "I am choosing to do this, just like you chose to serve, just like every human who has ever stood up to protect others." President Maria Santos addressed the United Earth Assembly from the Capitol building in Geneva. The assembled representatives from every human colony and nation listened in silence as she explained the situation. "The Corvin Federation has sent a weapon to destroy our world," she said. "They believe that by killing us, they can end our resistance. They are wrong. Even if Earth falls, humanity will continue to fight. We will never abandon the innocent people who depend on us." The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. Alien species listened in amazement as the leader of humanity calmly announced that they would rather die than surrender their principles. The Vorthic Empire held an emergency session of their Crystal Council. The ancient beings debated whether to intervene. Some wanted to help humanity. Others feared that getting involved would bring destruction to their own worlds. "These humans are changing everything," sang one elder crystal. "They are showing the galaxy that there is another way to live, a way that does not accept injustice." The Zephyrian Collective was experiencing something they had not felt in millennia: shame. They had the power to help defend Earth, but they had chosen to remain neutral. They watched as a young species prepared to sacrifice everything for strangers. Captain Tony Martinez climbed into his fighter, which had been modified to carry the explosive device. The bomb was so powerful that it would vaporize everything within. 100 miles. There would be nothing left of him or his ship. "You do not have to do this," Admiral Peterson said over the radio. "We can find another way." "There is no other way, and you know it," Tony replied. "Besides, someone has to show these aliens what humans are really made of." The young pilot launched from the carrier UES Liberty and began his approach to the world breaker. The massive Corvin ship was already entering the outer solar system. Its weapons were beginning to charge for the attack on Earth. Supreme War Chief Devouring Maw of Darkness watched the approaching human fighter with contempt. One small ship against the world breaker? These humans truly are insane. But as Tony's fighter got closer, something unexpected happened. Ships began to appear around Earth. Not human ships, but vessels from other species. The Alterian Republic had sent their small fleet to help defend the world that had saved them. A squadron of Centauran cruisers dropped out of hyperspace. They had broken their government's neutrality order to fight alongside humanity. Young Vorthic crystals had stolen ships from their empire's fleet to join the battle. Even some Corvins had come. These were soldiers who had grown tired of their leader's endless aggression. They had decided that humanity was worth fighting for. "This is impossible," whispered the Corvin tactical officer. "The galaxy is uniting against us." But it was too late to stop the Worldbreaker. The massive ship was already in weapons range of Earth. Its main gun began to charge with enough energy to crack the planet's crust. Tony Martinez flew his fighter straight into the heart of the enemy ship. The Worldbreaker's defenses tried to stop him, but the other ships in the improvised fleet drew their fire. Alterian vessels sacrificed themselves to clear a path. Centauran cruisers died to protect the young human pilot. Tony reached the Worldbreaker's core just as its main weapon was about to fire. He armed the explosive device and said a prayer for all the people on Earth who would never know his name. "This is for humanity," he said, "and for everyone who believes in doing what is right." The explosion tore the Worldbreaker apart from the us. Inside, the massive ship broke into pieces, its terrible weapons silenced forever. But the blast also crippled the Corvin fleet that had been escorting it. Admiral Peterson watched from the bridge of his flagship as the enemy formation fell apart. The Corvin ships were damaged and leaderless. This was the moment to strike. "All ships attack," he ordered. "Make them pay for what they tried to do to our world." The battle for Earth became a rallying cry across the galaxy. For the first time in thousands of years, different species were fighting together against a common enemy. The young and the old, the peaceful and the warlike, all united by the example of human courage. The Corvin fleet was destroyed in the battle. The survivors fled toward their homeworld, carrying news of their defeat. The Worldbreaker was gone, and with it, the Corvin Federation's last hope of victory. But the real victory was not military. It was moral. The galaxy had seen what humans were willing to sacrifice for others. They had watched a young pilot give his life to save a world. They had seen an entire species choose death over surrender. The ancient aliens began to understand that they had been living in a false peace. They had been so afraid of war that they had forgotten what was worth fighting for. Humanity had reminded them that some things were more important than safety. The war was nearly over, but the galaxy would never be the same. The age of passive acceptance was ending. The age of active resistance had begun, and it had all started with one species that refused to let innocent people die while they stood by and watched. The destruction of the Worldbreaker broke the spirit of the Corvin Federation. Their supreme war chief, devouring maw of darkness, stared at the human general in disbelief. "You offer us mercy? After what we have done to your allies? After we tried to destroy your homeworld?" "We fight to win, not to destroy," General Williams explained. "We fight to make things better, not to make them worse. That is the difference between us." The Corvin leader was silent for a long moment. He had expected the humans to demand his people's complete destruction. That was what the Corvins would have done if they had won. But these strange mammals were offering something he did not understand, a chance to change. "I must speak with my war council," he said finally. The transmission ended. General Williams waited while the Corvins debated their fate. She knew they had no real choice. Their fleet was outnumbered 3-1. Their allies had abandoned them. Their own people were beginning to question their leaders. On the surface of Krex Prime, young Corvin warriors were watching the news reports of the war. They saw how humans fought not for conquest, but to protect others. They saw alien species working together for the first time in centuries. Some of them began to wonder if there was a better way to live. Sharptooth of Ambition was one of these young Corvins. He had fought against human forces and had been impressed by their tactics and their honor. When captured, the humans had treated him well and released him during a prisoner exchange. "Perhaps these humans can teach us something," he told his father, an old war chief. "Perhaps there is more to strength than just the ability to destroy." 3 hours later, Supreme War Chief Devouring Maw of Darkness contacted the human fleet again. His proud shoulders were slumped in defeat. "We surrender," he said simply. "But I do not understand your mercy. Why do you not simply destroy us and take our worlds?" Dr. Amanda Foster, who had been listening to the conversation, spoke up. "Because that would make us no better than you were. We fight to create peace, not to create fear." The surrender ceremony took place on the neutral station of Galactic Hub 1. Representatives from dozens of species came to witness the end of the war. Supreme War Chief Devouring Maw of Darkness signed the surrender documents with a heavy heart, but the ceremony was not about humiliation. Ambassador Helen Carter made sure of that. She stood beside the defeated Corvan leader and spoke to the assembled crowd. "Today marks the end of a terrible war," she said, "but it also marks the beginning of something new. The Corvan people are not our enemies anymore. They are our neighbors, and we will help them build a better future." The Eltyrians were amazed. A human forgiveness. Elder Mind Touch of Distant Stars spoke for his people. "We have felt the emotions of humans throughout this war. They feel anger at injustice, but they do not feel hatred. They feel sadness for their enemies' victims, but they also feel hope for their enemies' redemption. The war was over, but humanity's real victory was just beginning." Ambassador Carter stood before the Galactic Council and announced the formation of the Free Worlds Alliance. It would be a military pact dedicated to protecting peaceful species from aggression. "Any species can join," she explained. "But membership requires a commitment to act when innocent people are threatened. No more committees that talk while people die. No more neutrality in the face of evil." The first species to join were the Eltyrians, grateful for their rescue. The Centaurans followed, inspired by human courage. One by one, other species stepped forward. Even some former Corvan colonies asked to join, seeking protection from their old masters. The Vorthic Empire was divided. The older crystals wanted to maintain their traditional neutrality, but the younger generation had seen what humans could accomplish. They forced their elders to hold a vote. Crystalline Song of Ancient Wisdom cast the deciding vote in favor of joining the alliance. "For 3,000 years, I have watched injustice and done nothing," she sang. "These humans have taught me that wisdom without action is not wisdom at all." The Zephyrian collective joined next, their energy forms pulsing with new purpose. "We have hidden in our energy fields for too long," their representative declared. "It is time to use our power to help others." 6 months after the war's end, Admiral Jake Sullivan stood on the observation deck of the space station, Freedom 1. The station orbited Earth and served as headquarters for the Free Worlds Alliance. Through the viewport, he could see ships from dozens of species working together. Eltyrian vessels, with their graceful curves, flew alongside blocky human destroyers. Vorthic crystal ships sparkled like jewels next to the energy forms of Zephyrian craft. Even some reformed Corvan ships had joined the fleet, their aggressive designs modified for peacekeeping duties. "Hard to believe it all started with one war," said Captain Susan Mitchell, who had been promoted to admiral after her victories. She stood beside Jake, watching the mixed fleet conduct training exercises. "It did not start with the war," Jake replied. "It started when we decided that some things are worth fighting for." The real changes were happening on the ground. The new human military academy on Mars was training officers from across the galaxy. They were learning more than tactics and strategy. They were learning the human concepts of sacrifice, determination, and the warrior's code that protects the innocent. Colonel Danny Brooks, now the Academy's commandant, watched young beings from a dozen species working together. Corvan cadets learned to fight alongside former enemies. Eltyrian telepaths coordinated with human tacticians. Vorthic crystals sang battle songs with Zephyrian energy forms. "What are you teaching them?" asked a visiting Galactic Council member. "We are teaching them to be guardians, Brooks replied. Warriors who fight not for glory or conquest, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The galaxy was changing in other ways, too. The old system of ancient species dominating through age and tradition was breaking down. Young voices were being heard for the first time in centuries. New ideas were spreading from world to world. Corvin Federation was transforming itself into the Corvin Republic. Sharp Tooth of Ambition, now a leader among his people, worked with human advisors to build a democracy. It was hard work, but progress was being made. My people are learning that true strength comes from protecting others, not from dominating them, he told Dr. Foster during one of their meetings. It is a difficult lesson for warriors, but it is an important one. On the Alterian homeworld of Serenity, a memorial was built to honor Captain Tony Martinez and all the others who had died to save innocent lives. The memorial was simple, a crystal obelisk that sang in the wind, but the words carved into its base were powerful. They fought not for themselves, but for strangers. They died not for glory, but for justice. They are remembered not as conquerors, but as guardians. 5 years after the war, Ambassador Helen Carter gave her final speech to the Galactic Council before retiring. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from over 100 species, more than had ever been united before. When this war began, the galaxy was divided, she said. Ancient species ruled through tradition. Young species were ignored. Aggression was rewarded, while compassion was seen as weakness. She paused and looked around the vast chamber. Today, the galaxy stands together. We have learned that true strength comes from unity. We have learned that the price of peace is the willingness to defend it. The speech was interrupted by applause from beings who had never applauded together before. Crystals chimed, energy forms pulsed, and voices from 100 worlds cheered as one dot in the years that followed. The Free Worlds Alliance faced new challenges. Pirates tried to raid peaceful colonies, but found themselves facing coordinated fleets from multiple species. Dictators attempted to conquer their neighbors, but discovered that the galaxy would no longer stand by and watch. Each time, the Alliance responded quickly and decisively. They had learned the human lesson. Evil triumphs when good beings do nothing. Admiral Jake Sullivan, now in his 70s, stood once more on the observation deck of Freedom 1. His hair was gray, and his face was lined, but his eyes were still sharp. He watched as a new threat emerged from the galactic core, an ancient machine intelligence that had been sleeping for millions of years. But this time, humanity would not stand alone. The galaxy had remembered how to fight, and more importantly, it had remembered what was worth fighting for. Ships from 1,000 worlds began to gather. Humans and Alterians, Corvins and Vorphics, Zephyrians and dozens of other species prepared to face the new danger together. The galaxy no longer trembled at humanity's approach. Instead, it stood stronger, united by the human example that some things were worth dying for, and that the greatest victory was not conquest, but the creation of a better tomorrow. As Jake watched the mixed fleet prepare for battle, he smiled. Humanity had joined the fight and changed everything. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, he thought, was exactly as it should be. Devouring maw of darkness had gambled everything on destroying Earth and lost. Now his people faced the full anger of humanity, and their growing list of allies. General Patricia Williams stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance as the human fleet approached the Corvin, homeworld of Krex Prime. Behind her ships came vessels from a dozen other species. The Alterians had sent their entire remaining fleet. The Centaurans, huh?